Hello, everybody. Welcome to TYT Community this Saturday night, the 28th of February. I got a great show for you today, and I have an excellent panel for you. We're actually joined by somebody new today, Blake Holland from Texas. Hi, Blake. Welcome to the show, man.
Glad to be here.
Well, glad to have you. And also, we're being joined by, of course, longtime panelist Haven. Welcome to the show, Haven.
Hey, everybody.
And in the background, we have joining us the basically head of FYI Nation, Thomas Reynolds. Tom.
Hello, everybody.
Show,
Hey.
All right, so those are our panelists for today, and I'll be reintroducing them throughout the show when we start different segments, just to make sure that everybody who might have tuned in late or something knows who everybody is, and all that. So all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's get to some of the stories that we have for tonight. We've got 4 different discussion topics that I want to go through, and the first one that I want to start with is MSNBC. And the first thing I want to talk about tonight is the changes going on over at MSNBC. Recently, news has dropped that they are dropping 2 of the shows, or have dropped 2 of the shows. 2 of the shows have ended, Ronan Farrow's show and The Reid Report. Of course, they were citing some pretty dismal numbers. Basically, people have not been tuning in. Ronan Farrow, terrible. Though I actually did hear some good things about The Reid Report. So let me get into some of the numbers here on this that might explain why Phil Griffin has decided to change the channel's focus from opinion to, quote, investing in original reporting. So they're going to try to go through more of a straight news kind of angle instead of what they dubbed the Olbermann era of liberal opinion. So, but before I go to that, I just want to go to a 2012 Pew Research Center analysis found that MSNBC's program is 85% commentary and opinion and 15% reporting. Now they want to change that to more of an even balance, like Fox News and CNN. Now, hold on there. I say even balance between opinion and straight news, but let's be honest. Fox News may be doing straight news, but they lie a lot. So let's just get that out there. Now the numbers for MSNBC are actually really, really bad. They've gotten the lowest ratings ever that they had in a decade. They drew an average of about 55,000 viewers in the 25 to 54 demo. And that basically shows that daytime ratings were down 20% in total and 37% in that coveted demo. So this kind of explains why Phil Griffin is doing their little switch up here. But I want to go to you guys. I want to ask what you guys think about all this. Is this a decision that you agree with? Is this a bad decision? Just what do you think of MSNBC and the mainstream news media in general? Just give me your opinions. We'll start with you, Haven.
Well, there's several things that I feel I'm a little bit reserved about. Like, if you're trying to model yourself after CNN, there are some great things that CNN used to do. Having journalists like Soledad O'Brien bringing forth a lot of topics that most people didn't really care to even think about, putting forth really intensive intellectual content, going in that direction would be great. But I have this really strange feeling, seeing as they're already getting rid of a lot of journalists that could do such a thing, they're going in a direction that we don't really need, and this is definitely a grab for money. Like, they don't want to be the liberal voice, it seems like they're ignoring the fact that everybody in the nation is clamoring for more liberalism and liberalistic ideas, and they're just shifting either to the center or further to the right for some strange reason.
I'm glad you brought up the revenue part. According to some of the information that I found, MSNBC's total revenue was about $400 million as of last October. As of last October. CNN, however, has made about $1.1 billion as of October 2014. Those are the latest numbers that I could find. But Fox News has crushed at nearly $2 billion. So I just wanted to kind of compare and contrast those numbers of how basically being a liberal station doesn't pay. And we know from experience that Phil Griffin is kind of all about the money.
But it's not being a liberal station because they don't. I have never really heard MSNBC really push out a liberal point of view. I don't. When it comes
liberal with air quotes. I forget to do my air quotes.
So it's like they don't even give the liberal idea and the liberal base a chance to, like, no liberal is going to put their money forth because they don't hear themselves. They don't see themselves on TV. And they know that they're being bullshit. I mean, we can look at the Young Turks, the main channel. They're doing unbelievably well. They're very successful, and that's because they push out the views that liberals actually believe and see, and they're critical of everyone and not just one side. I mean, the Daily Show itself is popular because it's pushing a liberal views.
Well, that's one of the things, criticisms against MSNBC is that it hasn't been critical of everybody, that it was mostly Republican bashing. So according to some of the information here, MSNBC, that Pew Research poll that I mentioned earlier, or survey, MSNBC was more negative about Republican candidates than Fox News was about Democratic candidates. So, for example, MSNBC's coverage of John McCain and Mitt Romney was 73% and 71% negative, respectively. And in contrast, Fox News campaign coverage of Obama was never more than 46% negative. So really, they're doing a lot of Republican bashing, which, hey, you know, I do a lot of that, so myself. But you also have to, for what a liberal does, is that he takes a look at both sides and says, what adheres to my values? And if this Democratic Party is not adhering to liberal values, then we need to call them out on it. And it seems like they're reticent to do so. But anyway, I don't want to dominate the discussion with this specific point. I want to go to some of my other panelists. Let's go with you, Blake. What do you think about this whole thing? Do you have anything to add?
I would definitely agree with Haven on this. I think they see themselves more in the context of, well, look, we need to get viewership up, we need to get ad revenue up, we need to get this shit up. We don't give a fuck about the people who really tune in for, say, things that really matter to us, like, you know, liberal principles like raising the minimum wage or, you know, unions and the fact that they're pretty much near extinct in America. I don't think that they really honestly give a shit. And really, what they always do, and we all know it, they all are just in the tank for the Democrats, even when they're dead wrong. Even when they're dead wrong, they defend them, and it's ridiculous, and Americans are tired of hearing it.
Yeah, Americans are, I can definitely agree with the sentiment that Americans, and especially liberals, are sick of being lied to. As far as conservatives, I think a lot of them are not sick of being lied to. As you can see, Fox News numbers continue to dominate. But Tom, let's get your thoughts on this, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure. Thanks for coming to me last, Jeff. I want to say this specifically about MSNBC. These guys were the network who had Michael Savage on the air during the run-up to the Iraq War. He only got pulled off the air when he told somebody on air that he hopes they get HIV and dies. So this is at MSNBC. So when we go to MSNBC is changing its stripes or going to something new, no, they're just finding which way the wind blows to make more money. We need to remind ourselves, it's not like a liberal bastion. It never has been. It's just a way to make more money. And you said it, Jeff, any way Phil Griffin can, hit the stone for more money, that's where they're going to go. And it's all about the money. And that's really what it is. It's not what we want, because we're not buying their crappy products that they have on air that they could sell ad buys for. Go ahead, because we're too poor mainly. Go ahead. That's all I got.
All right. Just one more thing. It's that I want to kind of add, and then we'll go across the board for any final thoughts. Is that I think that part of this is that I think a lot of the liberal audience is too smart. Like, I don't think we want a Fox News for the left. We don't want somebody just saying all Republicans are bad, all Republicans are evil all the time. Right? We actually do want to have good reporting. And I don't think this change is going to lead to that. I think this is just going to be another CNN light, as in Democrats say this, Republicans say that, you decide. We're going to be more down the middle. We're going to be more straight reporting, which actually, just because you're in the middle doesn't mean you're right. So I want to end with that. Does anybody else have anything to add? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would say I agree with you, Jeff. And also, what we really need is an information-based news organization. And that's something that we used to have, where it wasn't all about, and it was like, okay, here's what the science says, here's something that you might not have known, or this is something that's going on in the science world when it comes to sleep apnea or something like that. So a bastion of information that's not YouTube, that brings forth things that maybe the people aren't really aware of, and doesn't just give them information confirmation of what they already believe, but brings something new. And I guarantee you that would probably bring out more people. I mean, it's hard to compete. I mean, everybody looks at Fox News, but their main demo is old people, and the biggest population right now, as far as age group, is the baby boomers. So that's what we're combating, is the baby boomers getting everything that they want. Maybe it's time we start focusing on turning out the people who are going to replace these people after they all friggin' die. Like, they only have 20 more years, 30 if they're lucky. So it's like, let's be more inventive, because the demographic is going to shift really soon.
And I want to add something that I just thought of. We don't want to copy Fox News, because we don't have the same type of audience. And so Phil Griffin's idea to try and beat the Fox News of the left, that's one of the reasons that it failed, and that it's not going to work. It's completely different. And to try and copy something just because it works, yeah, it works on one side, but it definitely doesn't work on the other. Blake, do you have anything to add? Tom?
I'll go.
Go ahead, Blake.
Go ahead.
What I think, final thoughts on this is, I also think, I know this might lead to another discussion but for another day, but I think it's also a matter of formatting the news. I think Americans are sick and fucking tired of news. Like, this isn't 1950. Walter Cronkite is dead. That era of journalism is gone. We need to do something different with media. That's one of the contributing factors, I think, that is really hurting media like MSNBC, because they're not innovating. They're stuck in a time period that has long passed us. They need to move on.
Tom?
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, when you say reporting, if MSNBC does the Ferguson-style reporting that Chris Hayes did, I think they will go very far, very fast in the ratings. Chris Hayes did a really good job and earned some props with me when he went to Ferguson and really talked to the protesters and really didn't do the Don Lemon thing of, let me tell you why I'm here. No, he just sat back and listened. If they do that kind of reporting that we all crave, MSNBC will go far. But if they don't and does this CNN style, they're going to fail.
All right, fair. That's definitely. I think I can agree with that. Basically, we'll have to see what MSNBC brings to the table after they do their changes. I am skeptical. I'm cynical, but that's just the way I am. And I do think the future is not in that old style of MSNBC, cable company, whatever. But I think what the future is going to bring is more new media, internet-based media. For example, I don't know, Young Turks, TYT Network. Not tooting my own horn, but I'm tooting. Okay. Let's move on, shall we? So you've probably heard a lot of conservative arguments about food stamps, especially within the last couple of years, within the last Farm Bill especially, when Republicans decided to try to cut the program by about $40–50 billion, and they settled on an $8 billion food stamp. Now, there's a recent article that basically asked who gets food stamps, and it turns out that it's white people, mostly, for the most part. And it kind of goes into Gene Alday. If you can remember, he made his crazy welfare checks comment that said, quote, "I come from a town where all the blacks are getting food stamps and what I call welfare crazy checks. They don't work," meaning the people don't work, not the crazy welfare checks. Now, according to some information from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, most of the people who receive benefits from SNAP are white. And that's 40.2% of all SNAP recipients are white, 25.7% are black, 10.3% are Hispanic, 2.1% are Asian, and 1.2% are Native Americans. Now, in 2 congressional districts that Gene Alday are in, that overlap, are actually have more African Americans than whites that receive food stamps, according to USDA data. So perhaps in his town there are more people who are African American that receive food stamps, but overall, you generally have more white people. Now, I want to, before I kind of throw it out to the panel and ask you guys some questions, I want to mention that of the people on food stamps, nearly 1/3 of beneficiaries lived in a household where at least one member had earned some income. So they worked, right? And not only that, but there are plenty of people who basically live in a household that have either a child or a disabled person, and therefore that's how they qualify for food assistance. So I kind of want to throw it out to the panel, and we'll start with you, Blake. I kind of want to ask why the preoccupation with trying to destroy the food stamp program, despite the fact that it does have a lot of positive angles?
Well, I mean, you look at programs, social welfare programs, many things like LBJ Institute with the Great Society. You look at those, and they have had a really positive impact upon not just minorities, but poor whites who live in the backwoods, who don't make a living. So it's really been beneficial to everyone, and I think that they're really pushing back on this at this point because they realize, hey, if they can get up on off their feet, then they're going to vote against us, and we can't fucking afford that. So nah, let's cut it. And if you look at actually the recipients of SNAP, if you look at the recipients and you look throughout all 50 states, the state with the highest level of welfare is Mississippi, and 37% of the population is black, and the rest of the population is white. I mean, let's be real here. So
For sure.
That's what I have.
Haven, you want to chime in?
Well, I mean, as Blake pointed out, it's simply just a matter of mathematics. If you are the majority of the population is white, then more likely than not they're going to be the majority of whatever program. What I find hilarious about this study is back in 2012, during the presidential campaign when the GOP was trying to find out who was going to be Cinderella. Rick Santorum, I can't remember what state it was like Idaho or something like that. And
Could be Iowa.
Iowa. And he decided that he wanted to say that he didn't want to make black people's lives better in Iowa by just giving them these government programs and all this stuff. Ignoring the fact that the majority of the people on government programs in Iowa were white, and that's mostly because there's not a lot of black people in Iowa. Let's be real, let's be honest. Nobody wants to be out there like that. So it's like, I think it's really this strategy to try to compartmentalize for a lot of people. So if you paint, you know, food stamps and SNAP and all of that as a black thing, then it makes it easier for you to get your constituents to hate it. And that's one of the strategies that the conservative side, and sometimes, I guess, liberals, but the conservative GOP, that's their strategy. How can we get the people who vote for us to hate it, and how can we make it their idea? And a lot of the time, the best strategy to go is say, oh, that's a black thing. Oh, you know, you don't want food stamps, that's a black thing. Oh, why do you want, you know, schools to be a certain way? This is a black thing, so let's, you know, tear it down, completely ignoring the fact that the majority of them are going to suffer from it. So I think a solution to be for us as citizens to acknowledge the fact, hey, look, there are more white people on government programs than any other race in the nation, and that's not a bad thing, or that's not being racial. That's simply looking at mathematics. So they're trying to hurt you. Let's not bullshit and lie and make it a black thing, because it's not.
Well, you could argue that a lot of people being on food stamps as a whole, not necessarily putting in the angle of race is a bad thing. It means that people are food insecure. That's not a good thing. That's a terrible thing. But it speaks not to the fact that government programs create dependency, as the conservatives would like you to kind of believe and like you to think, but it actually speaks to the angle of how normal working people are being shafted. As I said, nearly 1/3 of food stamp beneficiaries live in a household where somebody's working, which means, you know, you're working, you have a job, you're making money, you're doing what the conservatives are, trying to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, and yet at the same time you're not making enough to be able to feed your family, to feed yourself, and to really kind of create that opportunity for yourselves to get out of poverty, which is what they always talk about, is trying to create opportunity. But they think that somehow pulling away any sort of help will make you work harder. It's one of those things that doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you look at it. And as you said, it does involve a racial angle of saying you don't want to be like those people and take that government program.
Well, I would say the reason why that is because they say, hey, you know, I've made it, but they haven't, so they must be lazy. And I think they live in this false reality that the United States is really a meritocracy when it isn't. It's proven time and time again it's not a meritocracy. We know this, but we keep electing these idiots who think that that it is a meritocracy, and it isn't.
At one point we were. At one point you could actually make it, but that's no longer the case, because a lot of people who have made it have decided to knock the bridges down, to burn the bridges. And we have a lot of good examples of people who are in Congress that have benefited from social safety net services that have made it. I mean, you could argue the definition of making it. For example, Paul Ryan, you know, being on Social Security, getting through college, and now burning the bridges. You could say, well, he just, you know, sucked ass and took lobbyist money to get there. So how is that really pulling yourself by your bootstraps? But it is another example, at least, of somebody who benefited from a program and now is in a position of power, who is now speaking against it. And of course, I can remember the famous Fox News clip of Craig T. Nelson of like Coach, right? Which is a terrible show, by the way. Coach saying, I had food stamps, but the government didn't help me. That is the government helping you. What are you talking about? And so it's just, I don't know, like there's got to be some sort of disconnect between people who receive food assistance and then think, no, I got here on my own. I deserved it, but you don't.
Well, there's definitely a disconnect, and it's like, I think it's also a cultural thing because a lot of Americans believe that they're in a class that they're really not, and it's usually higher than what it's supposed to be. And they, when you need help, I can't possibly be the lazy person. Like, this can't be me getting food stamps and help. That can't possibly be it. I earned it. I was working. This is my tax money helping me back later. Like, when it comes to you needing something, it makes it really easy to explain away or to really go through the thought experiment of figuring out why it is what it is and why you're receiving such a thing. And it's really difficult to see that and make the same logical conclusions when it's for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a cultural thing because we are so driven to be individualistic. And we're so driven
that also brings in the shame angle too, right? A lot of people who get on some of these programs when they were working and falling through hard times, it's a shame thing, and that's also perpetuated by culture. Oh, I'm so ashamed. I had to get help. I should be on my own. I should be doing this on my own, but I can't. I can't seem to make ends meet. I need help. And so there's that whole shame thing, but people are able to rationalize and say, well, it's just only for a short time, and the numbers bear that out. By the way, most people are not on food stamps for that long, unless they are disabled or elderly or children. Most people do get out of food stamps and go back to making enough money to not qualify for them anymore after a short time. But it still goes back to the shame angle, where it's like, I should be ashamed and you should be ashamed because you're on it too. You know what I mean?
Can I just throw in something in?
Go ahead,
Tom. It's okay, Jeff. Here's the thing. The Republicans are selling American exceptionalism, and you cannot be exceptional in their eyes if you're on food stamps, if you're on government assistance. You cannot be that shining city on a hill if they see you as lazy. So what we all have to remember is what they're trying to sell us and the conservators is literally this fantasy. All right? If you work hard enough, if you work strong enough, if you blah, 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 if you're not like France, you're going to be in this wonderful place, and they have to sell that. They can't come out. They're selling of the product they're selling will not ever allow them to come out and say, yeah, okay, you're at bootstraps, that's food stamps. Because what they're selling, it doesn't mesh with that. So
they sell the idea that we're all temporarily embarrassed millionaires.
Well, exactly, and you can't be a millionaire if you're on food stamps. I beg to differ, but what I'm trying to get across is it destroys their whole analogy of American exceptionalism. So we need to keep in mind what they're trying to sell us, and we're not buying it, but that's what they're trying to sell.
All right. Does anybody have anything else to add before we do any final thoughts on this whole thing?
Go
ahead.
Okay. I guess what I think is I just think that they really are really hypocritical because, let's face it, we all have benefited from these programs in one way or another. We all have benefited from them. We've all used them at one point or another. So why is it a shame factor if we're all? It's the state doing their part of the social contract of government. That's the point. You can't. That's the part of. That's the reason why government exists, is to fulfill their obligation to help the people when people fall on hard times.
That's a great point. Haven, do you have anything to add?
Well, I was just going to say that there's definitely this cultural thing that's changed, where there is a 50-year run where we went through the Great Depression and then realized that we as a collective, as a whole, as a nation, need to have safety nets because, oh, we have old people who die and don't get any help, so that's why we need Social Security. Oh, we have children that are starving, let's prevent that. You know, as a collective, we gave a shit about each other and our nation and making sure that we all were all right. And then something happened in the 80s where it just got to the point where it was like, nah, I don't need to care about my neighbor. I don't need to care about the person in the next state. You know, we are hundreds of millions of people as an island amongst ourselves now. And I feel like we don't really have a set American identity. Like, you know, I can not agree with a conservative. I cannot agree with a lot of liberals. I can not, you know, there's things that I cannot agree with ideologically. But the bottom line is I would still want my next door neighbor's kid to have food. And I think that that's something that has changed culturally, not just with government assistance, but just as a whole. We tend to completely remove ourselves from our communities, and for whatever reason, the idea of having a community and maintaining a community is like this negative, disgusting thing that everybody's trying to run away from, but it's something that we need to be running towards.
Tom?
No, that's exactly it. We need to stop buying the Republican. Even when we argue about it, the Republican messaging, we still kind of buy into it because we're trying to dismantle it. And we need to stop. We need to build our own narrative on this and stop giving credence and credibility to their narrative. And that's the biggest thing that we need to do with this. We need to form our own narrative. We need to be able to attack it that way and go at it, because that's the only way we're going to win this in the long run. And state food stamps and state benefits that have helped so many people for so long, including corporations, by the way.
For what I have to say for my final thoughts is that, you know, it's true that, you know, individuals can excel a lot, immensely. We can do great things on our own. But what we also have to remember is how much better we can do when we work together. When we all pool our resources together, we can get further as a community than we can on our own. There's no I in team, and we have to remember that as Americans, we are part of a team, and we have the capability of being the best team there is.
Communist, socialist, liberal propaganda bullshit.
I expect nothing less from any of our conservative viewers who might tune in. So, anyway, speaking of working together, we got another story to talk about. This one involving large amounts of debt. There's a group of former students that call themselves the Corinthian 15. Now, what does that mean? Well, they're a group of 15 students that had racked up lots of student loan debt from going to Corinthian. Corinthian University, of course, is one of those known as one of the for-profit colleges that have actually gotten in trouble for predatory lending, high-pressure sales, etc., right? They basically are a group that preys on people, veterans, minorities, people who are poor, pressure them to getting loans into thinking that, hey, if you get an education with us, we'll allow you to get a job. Now, that didn't exactly turn out. So these students decided that they would do something a little bit more radical. Instead of trying to pay off the loans, instead of trying to do whatever, they decided that we are going to take a stand. We're not going to pay off our loans. We're going to protest. We're going to not pay our loans on purpose, and we're going to let them know that this debt is we don't agree with this debt. We want it abolished. We want you to get rid of it, and not just our debt, but other people's debt from getting student loans from not just for-profit colleges, but a lot of colleges, which of course we've seen tuitions rise over the last few years. Probably over the last 25 years, by astronomical amounts. So I want to go into you guys what you think about this. Is anybody here a college student, for one?
Yes, I am, currently. I've been a college student for a very long time, unfortunately.
So you're, you know, so you understand the costs and stuff and the amount of debt that people can possibly get into.
Well, I'm very, very well. Me and my student debt have a very close relationship right now. We were off and on again, but I'm lucky enough to join the military. And because if I wasn't a military service member, I probably would be in a deeper hole. I have a lot of classmates and friends who are in $30,000 debt, $80,000 debt. So it's one of the most it's the daunting thing. It's very daunting, and to know, like, when you're first getting out into the workforce after you graduate, knowing that you might not have a job that's out there for you, or even if you do, it's a very, very competitive market depending on what you're going in. Not everybody can be STEM majors, so it's not a lot of people are looking for certain qualities and skills that you're obtaining and all that stuff. It's a really difficult time these days. So I can totally understand protesting debt and being and trying to cut yourself off from that. My only issue is that does it change anything structurally? You can say that you're not paying your debt all you want, but does it stop the IRS from garnishing your wages? Does it change the legislature so that being in student debt can now be put on as something that you can get out of with bankruptcy? Like, it's making a statement, true enough, but there are statements that have already been made. People have already said this. People know that there's debt. There are people that are already going through their debt and going through that problem. Now we need to start focusing on how to change it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing to, when it comes to changing something, the first thing is to let people know how bad it is. And it seems like when a lot of people get done with their debt, they don't care about the issue anymore. They're like, whatever, I'm done with mine, so fuck it. I don't really care. You should pay your loan. I had to. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, that's what you hear from a lot of people, especially when you come over to the right side of the aisle. I paid my student loans. If you can remember Steve Ducey. Yeah, I just got done paying my student loans just not long ago. Why should you get 2 years of free community college when they were talking about, of course, Obama's free community college proposal to help reduce the debt burden on some of these students? And speaking of debt, let me just throw this out there. The student debt in this country now is about $1.2 trillion. And according to the think tank Demos, that's supposed to climb somewhere to $2 trillion by 2025. So, we're looking at a lot of debt, and we're looking at a lot of problems associated with that debt because, once again, that does stop people from spending that money in other places, and there's no guarantee to get a job after college. So those are some of the problems with that. I want to go to what you think about this, Blake. Why don't you weigh in?
Well, where do I start?
Well, let me ask you a question then. Do you think that this strike, this so-called debt strike, do you think it's going to have any impact?
I wish, but honestly, no. And I'll tell you why. Because it's, like you said, it's a problem of individuals. It's not as a collective, so we don't really care what a group of individuals go through. And people would also cite, oh, well, they got involved in the bed with, an online, pay-to-play school. You pay and you get nothing in return. And I could see kind of the point there, but, the fact that the interest rates are so ridiculously high, I think that negates their misguidedness in investing in an institution that was a complete scam from the beginning.
And there's another, of course, argument that people use is that, well, you signed on for it, you signed that consent form, therefore you have to have your personal responsibility. Never mind the fact, and that is a fair point, by the way, but never mind that there is that they do prey on people who have lower information. You know what I mean? You can sort of shift the blame towards the individual, but what really good does that do? It doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't help the people in debt. But a lot of people still are quite content to say it's your loan, you take care of it. But it does have a bigger effect on the economy as a whole as this debt continues to pile up.
Yeah, I would have a counter to that argument because, yes, you're going into school. I guarantee you, if socially people didn't need a college degree to get a job, they wouldn't go. That's kind of just, nobody wants to take a lot of people, there's a lot of fucking information that you don't want to do. Not everybody feels like they are college material. So it's a necessity. And when you're going into a social contract with your community, with your nation, you're going in to get this information because it is a requirement, societal requirement that you have to obtain this degree, this diploma, this training in order to get into the workforce. So we're doing our part by getting the education. You would think that us as a nation would do our part and say, okay, well, here's openings in the workforce. You know, here's an avenue for you to pay off and actually utilize the training that you're getting, and that's where the problem is. It's not really that hard to pay off your student loans if you have a consistent, steady job that pays you well. But seeing as we're in an economy that's shifting away more and more from affordable payments or not affordable payments, but an economy that's shifting away from paying its workers well, and we're shifting into getting more and more jobs that are service jobs that don't necessarily need a degree, or it's not necessarily required. But it's like, if you want a decent job, it's going to be highly competitive. Everybody wants to have a life that they can live. So it's like, it's very difficult to sit there and shift the blame, because it's not like students are going out there and just getting a college degree for the fuck of it. There's nobody who's just getting double majors just for shits and giggles. A lot of people are doing this because they want training so that they can get a decent, steady job. And it's like, it's ridiculous to have such an argument like that, and a lot of these people really do need help. This education isn't cheap, and it used to be cheap, but it's not anymore.
And that's another thing, is that it used to be much more affordable. You used to be able to pay for your college while having a part-time service job, like you were saying. Now we have college costs that are, somewhere like 1,000% higher in tuition than it was back in the 1960s, for example, when a lot of people were starting to get into doing college costs. So really, we've had prices soar. There has to be some sort of solution to this. I don't know if a debt strike is the way to go. I don't know, because I don't think that people will really care enough to say, we care about your plight, maybe we'll do something. I don't think there's enough caring in that in a lot of people. So I don't know. I mean, right now I don't know what the solution is to this debt problem.
Jeff, can I offer a solution? I've been really quiet.
Go ahead, Tom.
Elect more Elizabeth Warrens. Get more Elizabeth Warrens, Bernie Sanders in Congress. Elect them. Stop saying voting doesn't matter. Stop saying we're gonna not stay home. If the same people who are doing this debt walkout or whatever it is, which I think is really stupid and sad because it's not getting there, actually voted and went to the midterms, they would have probably outnumbered the people, the old farts, the Q-tips, who went and voted for the Republicans. If you want to see real sustainable change in this issue, elect more Elizabeth Warrens, elect more Bernie Sanders, and do not stop until the Congress is full of them, until the state Senate is full of them, until Alec cannot knock on a door and get permission to enter. If you want to end this crisis, and it is a crisis, elect more Elizabeth Warrens. It's really simple, and it doesn't need some silly strike, because we've learned strikes don't matter anymore unless you're really going at it, and this is silly. Unless there's a visible face to it, people are not going to care. A visible face to it, Elizabeth Warren. A visible face to it, Bernie Sanders. Really simple.
I agree with a lot of what you said, Tom, but I would slightly disagree in saying that electing the right individuals is necessarily the solution itself. The reason I say that is because the federal government sees that student loans is a monopoly to just make so much money. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but last year the federal government raked in billions in student loan payments. So I think that yes, I think that's a step, electing the right individuals to Congress. I think that is a step. But I think that we also have to address the greediness of the federal government. I think that's another thing we have to address.
Well, that's a good point.
No, Blake is actually exactly right. But you can kill two birds with one stone by vetting the candidates the way the Tea Party vets them and make them Elizabeth Warren candidates. It's really simple. We do not need to farm a Tea Party on the liberal side. We just need to vet the candidates. If you have someone who's even remotely strong as a progressive liberal candidate and fits your criteria, knock on doors for them, get them elected, and then we could see real change in this. And maybe get free, affordable universities for everyone where instead of it being a profit center for the government helps and gives that bootstrap handout that the Republicans are always talking about.
Well, it seems no matter what we're doing right now, we're on the wrong course and we're continuing to band-aid a problem that right now is on track to get much, much worse. And whatever direction that we choose to take, it's important to remember that what we need to focus on is to help students so they can afford school, get jobs, and add back to the economy. And right now what we're doing is that we're sinking students, loading them with debt, or allowing them to load themselves with debt when they don't exactly know what they're doing in the case of these predatory loans. And that's creating a huge problem in the future, and it's something, no matter what we do, we have to figure out a way to help them so that we can help ourselves. Like I said, we are a community, and that's what we do to them, to our future leaders, we do to ourselves. All right. Let's move on, shall we? And you know what? And I forgot to do introductions and stuff throughout the segments. I have to start adding that in. For those of you who are listening on the live, the FYI Live, so who are listening to the radio portion of the program and not watching us live on YouTube, sorry about that. You're listening to TYT Community here on TYT Nation. I am with Blake, Haven, and Tom. All right, so let's get into our last story here and kind of close out the day. You guys remember the case of Tamir Rice, who was the 12-year-old that was gunned down by police for carrying a BB gun. Now, some recent revelations in this for the case against the city of Cleveland. The city of Cleveland has responded to the lawsuit filed by the family of Tamir Rice. They responded saying that Tamir's death was caused by his own actions and not from the policeman. According to this article here, the city of Cleveland on Friday responded to the lawsuit filed by the family of Tamir Rice with several different defenses, one of them being that it's your fault that you died. If you're Tamir Rice, it's his fault. He shouldn't have been walking in the park with a BB gun because, you know, if you're a black boy who's 12 years old walking in a park, you deserve to be shot by police. Well, that's pretty fucking classy, isn't it? Now, if you guys can remember the video that went viral about this whole thing, that showed the shooting, surveillance footage, the police shot him in less than 2 seconds. They just rolled up and immediately started firing. And like I said, he was pointing he wasn't pointing, he had a pellet gun in his possession. From what I remember, they also claimed that he looked like he was about 20 instead of 12. So I just want to get your guys, the panel's reaction on this whole thing, this whole statement by the city of Cleveland about this and let you guys rage if that's how you feel. Haven, let's start with you.
You would start with the black person first. That's crazy. I think I'll probably be the calmest one. Obviously, it's rather disrespectful to say that it was Tamir Rice's fault for him getting shot, but that's kind of the solution that both the left and the right are trying to produce for these young kids. I don't know if you've read the stories about how certain schools are passing out pamphlets on how you're supposed to properly talk to the police officers, and it's kind of the same logic as, you know, teach your daughters to hold keys properly so that if they are getting raped, you know, even though that's going to definitely happen if you go out, you can find a way to not do that. You know, teach your daughters to not dress a certain way. Now we have to teach our sons not to wear certain clothes and act certain ways because our police officers are a little bit jittery and we don't want to, you know, make them feel any type of way. So it's unfortunate that they would say something, but this is a trend that's going on everywhere, and especially in Ohio. I mean, there's a new story about a young African-American woman and her infant that got murdered. So it's like, is it her? Was that situation her fault as well? Was the baby, who was only a couple months old, did that baby do something that was a little bit, maybe the baby was seen as being 7 because, you know, when you're black, you just look older for whatever reason. Like, it's disingenuous, it's ignorant, and there's a lot of people who have vested interest in keeping things the way that it is because it makes it easier. And I personally don't think it's going to change until those blackout sites that are in Chicago or in every other city, and it's not just Tamir getting shot, but Timmy as well. And when everybody starts to feel this pain, that's when that excuse of, oh, well, you didn't say the right thing or you didn't do the right thing, that's not going to be accepted anymore.
Well, speaking of not doing the right thing, the officer that actually was had shot Tamir Rice, he had a rather spotty record back when he was working for a different police department. And of course, this police officer was his name was, oh, where is it? His last name is Lohman. And Officer Lohman, his former supervisor, actually had wrote quite a few complaints against him, saying that he had a lack of maturity. He was dangerous. He would lose his composure during exercises, during firing range exercises. He had a lack of ability to follow instructions and an inability to manage personal stress. So this guy was sort of a wreck, sort of a loose cannon, and a big problem. And according to his former supervisor, quote, I do not believe time nor training will correct these deficiencies. And yet, he was hired by the Cleveland PD and put on this case, and you saw what happened. So I think this is part of a trend and part of a problem of not training our police officers correctly and actually looking at having terrible hiring practices when it comes to officers. So I want to get Blake and then Tom real quick, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, you're totally right about the lack of training and sensitivity training that our officers are getting. They are not being trained properly. We need to come to this realization. If Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, and Tamir Rice can get murdered in the span of not even 6 months, I think it points to a lack of training on the part of officers. I think officers just or what training they do get is thrown out, and they aren't being closely monitored and through their field observations or whatever. And another point I would like to point out is I think we need to just come out and say it. I hate how the liberals and Democrats will say will continue to say, oh, we're a melting pot and we're a post-racial society. No, we are not a post-racial society, and this is evidence of it, because violence against African Americans is twice as high compared to white counterparts. So how are we a post-racial society if our African American peers are busted for drugs, guns, and all these other things twice the rate of what white people are getting busted for. That seems complete. That's horseshit, and we need to stop telling that horseshit lie, because that is not the truth.
All right, Tom, what do you think?
I'm just over it. I'm over the fact that we don't have community oversight. I'm over the fact I don't even think it's training anymore. I think it's the fact that we're not watchdogs. We're not watching the police. The police watch the fuck out of us, but we're not watching them. The only time we seem to watch them is when another kid gets shot, when there's another late-term abortion, as I like to call them. I am so sick and tired of the lack of community overreach, and that's what we need. Screw the training. Yes, that's important, but I think overreach and community watchdogging of the police, knowing that this is wrong and we're not going to allow you to do this anymore, and not just complaining about it after the fact. We need to, again, goes back to more lawmakers who will let us do this, and if they won't, chuck out the crappy, yeah, I'm going to try and, yeah.
Yeah, so look, there's obviously a lot of problems with this, and we have a lot of problems with our policing, and we definitely need a lot more oversight, and we definitely need a stronger community, and to really kind of push back against the overreach of police. We have militarized our police to the point of where they now see us as the enemy, and that's not, we're not dealing in the era of officer friendly anymore. And so that needs to change. The police need to serve us again instead of serving those who are in power and serving the banks and seeing us as the enemy. It's not the way we want our communities to be policed or watched over. All right. That's all we have for you tonight here on TYT Community. I want to thank you, Blake, Haven, and Tom for joining us tonight. Your input was excellent. Thank you for joining the panel. We look forward to seeing you guys come back another time. We air, of course, TYT Community on TYT Nation live every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern over on youtube.com/TYT Nation. Make sure to subscribe. Check us out. We've got a lot of great content. I do my own show, Round the Nation, here. Post the clips up on here, so check me out there. Or if you enjoy podcasts, I do an hour-long podcast of the same name over on FYI Nation, FYINation.com. So check that out. And thanks, everybody. You guys have an amazing weekend. We'll see you next week, Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Good night, everybody. Say good night, everybody.
Good night. Oh.
Good night, everybody.
BT Dubs. Check out my YouTube channel, Ides of Haven. I have a great video, if I can say so myself, on perspectives and heroes, as well as on the unfortunate situation that we have with our Department of Homeland Security. So that, again, that's Ides of Haven, and you can check me out on Twitter at HavenGOTS.
All right, and of course, make sure you give this video a like and a share, too, if you like what you see. So, much appreciated, much love. We'll see you next week.